College Football Nation, we are back. We are back coming off a big week. We are on a heater. I don't mean to brag, but I personally had a huge week. Also moved myself up to the top 20 rankings of College Football DFS, number 18. So I'm looking to get up into the top 10 after this week. If you look at the overall rankings on Roto Grinders, I hit third in the big GPP. It was obviously a pretty good week. I think if you faded a lot of the chalk last week and just played the other good plays, you were in good shape. Like that was basically the play. Just avoid the chalk, and all the other good plays kind of came through. And we kind of showed you, like, if you can shift through these 14 game slates, there's really not that many players on every team you can go to. So you can really narrow your player pool down to a more reasonable set. Dave, how'd you do last week?
I didn't hit like you did, but I still had a really profitable week. Cashed in about 40% of my cash games, cashing over 50% of my GPPs, cashing over 50% of my cash games. So really had a solid profitable week. And we do some of the guys, we targeted Sam Hartman. Great week. A.T. Perry, once again, putting that combo together. Myers late for Notre Dame, catching that garbage touchdown. Just some little things that we were really in tune with, in line with, paid off, where I just missed on a couple small pieces to really get me high in those standings. But that's what it is. That's what DFS is. We're on the right track. You hit it. I'm ready for this week.
I'm ready for a big week. Now, this week, the pricing's going to be more challenging. Ooh. So, they've really priced some guys up. You got to pay up if you want to get some of these elite plays. I was saying before the show, one of my strategies typically is in 14 games, you can find value somewhere, right? There's so many games. I think it's harder to find that value this week, right? They've priced kind of accordingly. The games you really want to target, you got to pay up for. So we're going to talk through it. We're going to find those spots where we might be able to get an edge and find out those value plays. But you're going to have some lineups where you kind of spend up somewhere and then find some value plays elsewhere to round out your lineup. I think it's going to be really hard to go full value the way that these rosters and pricing got set up this week.
Totally agree. And my fear is we might have to use a really bad name, Bo Nix, but we'll get into it.
Wow. Listen, I mean, he is a bad name.
Yeah.
But he threw 5 touchdowns in a game this year.
I did, and he's 5,500.
And he's 5,500.
Yeah.
So he also could get pulled by halftime. So anything can happen with Bo Nix. All right, so let's go through it. Let's dive right in. A 13-game slate this week. First game we'll go through. Make sure pull the depth charts up like we always do, and we'll look at this Georgia-South Carolina game. So right now, in the same spot we've been on Spencer Rattler, especially against Georgia. We're not gonna see what he does here. He hasn't looked great. He was obviously a very promising prospect, but it hasn't panned out. This probably isn't the get-right spot against the best team in the country.
Right.
If there's anyone on this team that you might want to play, Wells is their number one receiver. They throw to him a lot at 4,200. I mean, he's cheap. Again, you're going against a Georgia defense that can shut anyone out. So it's not like someone I'd be prioritizing. But if you think that they can maybe – he might be able to get 7 catches because they're going to throw to him so much and they can't run the ball. Maybe you can sprinkle him. I would prefer Wells probably in cash because I think he can get a few catches and maybe be okay at 4,200. But other than that, I won't touch this team.
I agree. Like, it's Georgia, right? And it could be 0 points on the board. And I'm just not willing to put my DFS money into a team like South Carolina against the Bulldogs. Maybe, like you said, maybe we can get there Wells at 4,200 because that's high risk, high reward. You'll get a lot of people, probably less than 10% ownership, but that's about it.
Agreed. Now, on the Georgia side, I think things get interesting because they realized they came back to reality and sent it better. He's no longer the most expensive quarterback in the 9K range. And now I actually think he's interesting because they're going to score points. At 7,300, he's now almost a value. He's middle of the pack. He can run. I think he's in play here.
Oh, he's definitely in play. And let's look what happened last week. If you were fortunate enough to stack an Arkansas lineup against South Carolina, it really paid you off. South Carolina's D was ranked kind of in the top 20, but they didn't really play anybody. Nobody knew, but now we know. And I think he got some good value here in Stetson Bennett. It's crazy to think that this kid right here could get you 30. He really could.
He can get 30 any week. So I think Stetson Bennett's a very good play. Now, my biggest interest on the Georgia side are actually both backs. I'm okay with both McIntosh and Milton. I think they're both very involved. It looks like so far McIntosh is basically their number one receiver, along with running back. So
14 catches, right? Something like that.
And let's not forget, in DFS, you got a point per reception. So that really raises his floor. I mean, I really would like McIntosh more as a cash option, small tournament, because I think he has a pretty high floor. His ceiling, in a blowout game, I can't imagine he's going to play 4 quarters. But, I think they're going to score enough points where he can certainly get there. Yeah,
I agree. I think both are in play. My issue is, if you're playing both, it's a decent chunk. I'd probably just try and play one and get lucky. That's just kind of my strategy here. And if I'm doing that, I might get the guy with the ball more, and that's Milton, and he's 1,600 less. But like you said, McIntosh is their number one receiver right now, so I wouldn't blame you for going up to 6,700 there.
And maybe, who knows? I'm sure other people see that too, but maybe it'll be unique stacking Bennett and McIntosh because it's a running back quarterback stack the receiver. So maybe that's a way that you can get a little different if you wanted to play Bennett.
Yeah.
The last person I'll mention is Brock Bowers, because I love Brock Bowers. He hasn't been that good yet this year. He hasn't done much, or maybe people are starting to go away from him. But at 7K, this is, I would think, other than Meyer on Notre Dame, he's the best tight end in the country. And he's one of the go-to weapons on the best team in the country. So he's going to have some big games. Maybe this is the spot where he breaks it up.
I actually I love him in this spot. I'm with you. This guy hasn't had to do anything yet. But this week we're getting SEC play, and I really think he's going to break out. You can't hold this guy down for that long. I think he's a true sophomore, if I remember right. But he's fantastic. To me, he is the best tight end. So I'm with you. I think he's worth the play. No, 7's high. If you're a casual DFS player, you're going to click it and you're going to say, "Oh, this guy only averages 5 points a game." Well, that's where we take some value and take a chance here with Bowers.
Yeah, I think that's the best play. I think he's definitely a GPP play in that I think the casual person's going to see the 5 points a game and look away and not realize that he was their best player last year, and he's still is. Just they blow so many teams out. There's no need to really feed him the ball often. So, all right, that's that game. Let's move on to this. This is the storyline, I guess, of the week. They finally fired Scott Frost. That was long overdue. I feel bad for Scott Frost because he's really kind of going through it, but you kind of have to laugh. He's famous for saying that he thought Adrian Martinez was better than Joe Burrow. That's ridiculous. So I actually think that they're going to rally this week, and I think the game might be a little bit more competitive than people think. I think they might. I don't think they're going to win the game, but I think maybe they keep it close for a half, right? And they keep up with them for a little bit before Oklahoma runs away with it. So is anyone on the Nebraska side playable for you?
They are. I guess for me, it'll probably end up being – I kind of like Thompson a little bit. I know he had one rough game in the middle there versus North Dakota, but 300 yards in the other 2 games, I think he's worth kind of a stab here. And Palmer, the wide receiver, one of his favorite targets, has been pretty good this year, 18 for 231. Grant's always good at running back. I just don't know if I want to run against Oklahoma. So those 2 I'm interested in. The good news about Nebraska, if they keep it up, Whipple's still there. They're averaging, I think, 2.7 plays per minute, which is 13th in the nation. So they're going to try and play with pace. They're going to be behind. That's why I like a quarterback wide receiver stack here.
The only other guy I'll throw in is Marcus Washington. At 3,600, he's involved in this offense. So if you're looking for value somewhere, you can really dip down. I think, again, like you said, if they might throw the ball 40 to 50 times. So there's got to be some kind of catches. I think Palmer is the better option, but Marcus Washington could also be in play too.
Yeah.
Now, over on the Oklahoma side, this is where things get interesting. They're going to score a ton of points. It's going to happen. So how do you get those points in your lineup? That's what we're trying to figure out, because they've really priced Dylan Gabriel up. Rightfully so. He's probably the best player on the slate. But at 9,500, he's hard. It's just hard to fit him in. And then if you want to play him with Mims, that makes it even harder, because if you play him and Mims, you got to go real value for the whole rest of your lineup. Now, they both could be the number 1 quarterback and receiver on the slate, but can you build a competitive roster with both? And that's what you got to figure out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Here's the contrarian play. Yvonne, thanks for checking in. Palmer at 4,200. I do feel is where we're going to start to get value in the slate. But Mims is awesome. We get it. But Quentin Newsome on the other side, he's a really good cornerback for Nebraska. And I'm not saying he's just going to shut him down, but Newsome's, I think, 140 snaps or so this year. No touchdowns, only a few receptions. He's going to follow him all over the field. It's probably a game that I'm probably going to look at number 2 or number 3 on Nebraska. I know Drake Stoops hasn't been great yet. Same with Weiss, but I think I'm going to try and play at least one of them. And I do like Gabriel because of the fact that this total is 65.5. High percentage of points going to be scored, high pace. So I'm going to look to – and look, we love Gray too. So I could get him in there as well. But it's going to be hard for me to get Mims and Gabriel. I agree.
I agree with you. I think it's a good call, right? I think we can find secondary receivers just because you kind of have to make your lineups work. And I like the narrative, right? The Nebraska does have an NFL cornerback on their team, so covering him. I don't think he's going to shut him down, but you're right. Maybe he slows him down enough where someone else becomes the priority receiver.
And what's he, 8,900? That's tough. It's really tough for me to. I mean, you need 30 points for 8,900. I'm just not sure we can get there.
He's got to have probably. I think 100 yards and a touchdown is still not enough.
I agree. It's the same theory we went through with Alabama last week, and look what happened.
Exactly.
Right? So.
Yep. Now, I do think Brandon Willis is in play. Their tight end, 3,700. He's really cheap. Maybe he catches a touchdown again. He'll only need to have 50 yards and a touchdown, and that will get his value. So you can throw a flyer on him. And Jaleel Farouk is on the field a lot. He hasn't done anything, but he's on the field. So if it is working out where they have good coverage on Mims, they got to find someone else.Maybe he does break out here and have a good game.
Yeah. I don't mind that play. I think that's a nice stab there.
I like Marcus Major. I actually think Marcus Major is very involved in this backfield. The fact that he's $2,400 less than Gray, I'll take a stab there, even if it's maybe he gets some late carries, some goal line work. I'm okay with being different and taking a shot on him as well.
I like it.
All right. Now, one of my favorite games of the week.
Agreed. I'm glad you said that. Agreed. Yes.
I love this Purdue-Syracuse game. I like both offenses. I think both offenses. Now, I also will say they both are not terrible defenses. This isn't going to be just a straight-out, just nonstop scoring shootout. But I think both these offenses are pretty explosive, and I can see how the game script can turn this to a shootout. Now, the first and obvious one is Schrader is mispriced. Schrader is one of the best quarterbacks. The one guy that you're actually getting value on who can run for 100, have a good throwing game is Schrader. At 6,400, he's probably my favorite play of the week.
I'm 100% with you. Like I've had 2 stars next to his name. He's got to be in most of my lineups at that price. It's crazy this year. He's always been a guy that run and pass third. But this year he's really tried to develop his pass game. 5 TDs, no interceptions. You can really see that he is a dual threat now, for real. But the first threat is still running, and he's so effective at that. Purdue 54th in run D success rate. So I think there's some opportunity here for for Syracuse to get some yards on the ground. And for me, it starts with Schrader. I know how good Tucker is, but it's Schrader. I'm with you.
And let's not. Keep this in mind. If Schrader has proven that he has improved his passing, and that's not just a fluke the first couple of weeks, by the end of the year, he's going to be 9K. Because if he can throw for 300 and run for 100 every week, he's 2 players in one position. So this pricing is head scratcher here. So I think
Yvonne checking in saying he's second on FanDuel at 11-2. So FanDuel's got it right. Yeah. DraftKings giving you just a free discount, so we take it.
And keep in mind with that, I'm sure his ownership is going to be high because we're not the only ones that can see that. Right. So you're going to have to play with that ownership, but it's probably worth it here. Now, Sean Tucker at 8,900 is awesome too, right? He's one of the best running backs in the country. But let's not forget, similar to the Georgia guys, they throw him the ball more than any other receiver. So you can play them together if you want. If you're going to think this could be a high-scoring game, I'm okay with going with both of them here.
Well, you can because Schrader's 6,400. Yeah, Tucker has, I think, 10 catches in 2 games already and 14 targets. So, yeah, I'm in love with it. So, he's averaged 31 points, DK points a game. So I think it keeps going this week. So I like stacking those 2 for real.
The last on the receiver side, none of these receivers have done anything to make you really have any confidence. Devon Cooper has the most targets and he's minimum price. He hasn't done anything to make me feel like he's great, but if you want minimum price on some guy who seems to have been involved, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think I'm probably fading almost all Syracuse receivers, but I'd be okay with giving a shot at 3,000 there for sure.
That's really it. Yeah, I don't think there's a ton of upside, but because he's such a minimum price. Now let's look at the Purdue side. Aiden O'Connell. I'll be honest with you. I thought he was going to regress after losing some serious NFL talent at receiver, David Bell, last year. But he looks good. He looks like he hasn't missed a beat. I actually think he's a really good player. So they priced him accordingly, right? At $7,500, I think that's probably the right price for him. I think he's a good quarterback. I think you can play him there, but it's not really a discount. I would much rather prefer Schrader. But, in college, you can play two quarterbacks. So if you're thinking this is going to be the high game, I definitely think O'Connell's in play.
Yeah, and I mean, realizing I think everyone does that's watching games in the dome, right? So I think this, even though it's good weather everywhere, it really does give you an opportunity for pass success rate. Purdue 13th nationally in pass success rate. So I do think it's a good spot for Aiden O'Connell. I agree with you. I think he had a game. He was 17 and 19 recently. He's averaging almost 23 DK points a game. He's solid, and I think you can get away playing him. I think this is a 30-point potential for sure in this spot.
I'm with you on that. I don't love the Purdue running game. King Duro, he's been around, but I just don't think that great on the ground. I prefer to stay to the pass catchers where you get Charlie Jones, who seems to be one of the best receivers in the nation. I mean, they are feeding him the ball.
Yeah.
He's been explosive. I'm definitely going to have some exposure to Jones here. But the rest of these pass catchers are all kind of middle of the road for me.
Agreed. I mean, Jones is almost 40 DK points a game. That's crazy in 2 games. He had a exciting matchup against Penn State, exploited that. So, I think I'm going to have some exposure to Jones and not much anywhere else.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look over here at this Western Kentucky Indiana game. So this one's interesting because there's still a lot of unknowns, I think, with both these teams. Indiana seems to be improved. How good they are, we don't know yet, but they look like they're improved. And then Western Kentucky still has that explosive offense, but what are they really? Right? They're kind of mixing. We saw one good game and one disappointing game out of them. So what they really are, I think this is going to be their toughest challenge yet. And how are they going to perform? At the end of the day, this is still an offense that's going to throw a ton of times. It's going to be really fast-paced. And I think for DFS purposes, it's okay to get some exposure to it. But you aren't getting any discounts at 7,800 with us, Reed.
Unfortunately, you're not. And I do like Reed. Indiana's allowed over 400 yards a game defensively, a lot of that in the air. And I think, they're going to still, even though they lost their offensive coordinator, they've turned some things around there. They still play at that pace that they've had in the past with our who was it, Zappy last year, who was just, we loved. So I still see value in Reed. Like 78 is probably a good price, but it's one where I don't know how much high floor, low ceiling. This game, I think, will play at a little lower pace. We saw Indiana, Illinois playing the low 20s. So like Reed, but yeah, I don't love Reed. Yeah,
I think I'm with you. I'm going to pass on the running game here. I think they throw the ball too much to be interested.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to get a big game out of Corley, but I just think at 8,100, he's not. I think it's he's overpriced here. So David Davis, he's the target leader, 5,200. I'd much prefer him in the salary savings in this passing game.
Yeah, that's a nice number. He's averaged 100 yards a game. So yeah, 5,200, I'd like it.
Yep. Now on the other side of the ball, there's a few guys. there's two plays on Indiana that seem to be they're going to be chalky, but I think they're both really good plays, and that's Cam Camper, who seems to be their top receiver so far, who's looked really good. He's a JUCO transfer. And, I guess DJ Matthews still listed as number 1 receiver, but the way things look, it looks like Camper is the top guy at this point. And he got like Sean Shivers. He transferred from Auburn. He was their number 2, but he was in a committee, and he wasn't bad at Auburn. And now he's the workhorse here at Indiana, and he looks pretty good. So at 6,100, I certainly think he's in play as well.
Yeah, I do. I mean, he's definitely getting the volume, right? 35 carries in 2 games, so you can project that out. A close game, we could see 20 carries easily here. So I think he's in play. And it's interesting that you talk about what was it, Shivers or Camper, because I do like Matthews, but I think Camper at 4,800, 15 catches already, 22 targets. That's really nice at 4,800. I think that's a good call.
I for sure. I'm going to be playing a lot of Camper. And the one bet that I'm so unsure about that I guess I'll ask you, are you going to have any Basilak in your lineup?
Look, I hated him at Missouri. I'll be frank. And but he's kind of got a new little lease on life, and it seems to be, I don't know, ripping around a little bit. Maybe he has a little more time there. But Missouri, he was just too careless. But this year, he's been pretty solid. I will have some exposure to him at 6,200. We talked earlier about a couple other guys that are coming up right in that range. I think this range is 6,000. You got to get your second quarterback, and Basilak will be someone. I'll play him as a number 2, or he won't be my primary, but I'll get some exposure.
I think I agree with that. I think all right.
It's WKU, right? They're going to play fast.
That's what it is. It's an opportunity against this team in a fast pace where he just might be in a good situation where he throws 270 and 3. That will get it done for him here. So yeah, I think he can do that against this team. All right, so let's take a look at this Cincinnati Miami Ohio game. I'll start by saying I don't. There's not much on this Miami Ohio side that interests me. I can probably full fade that team, and we can just look at the Cincinnati side.
I agree. Third lowest total on the board out of 13 games. I don't see anything on Miami that I like. I still have an idea that since he might be good on defense, I know they lost all that NFL talent, but they have a good scheme. So yeah, I'll avoid Miami for sure.
Oh, and now if we look at the Cincinnati side, I actually probably would have liked Ben Bryant. I just at 7,200, like he seems pretty similar to Basilak or one of those guys. Like I'd rather just take a shot on one of those guys and save $1,000 because he's like a middle of the road guy. Can he have a good game against a team that's not very good in Miami, Ohio? Of course he can, but he's not going to run. Probably won't be a very close game. Will he be throwing that much? Doubtful. So I probably would rather go elsewhere just because I think the price is a little too high.
Yeah, I mean he's killing it on the ground this year with negative 33 yards. So I'm with you. He's going the wrong way. So too much reliance on one dimension. So look, he can throw 300. I know he can against Miami. I just don't know if it's enough when you don't get much more out of the other parts.
I agree. And then, we can look at these receivers. I think one of these guys will probably have a good game, right? And it's kind of picking who. Scott seems to be the number one guy. So, I think he'd be the one to target. But at 6,600, there's no discount there. You really got to pay for him. So, if you want to go elsewhere, I completely understand it. But if you really, really want to target this passing game because they should have success, Scott's probably the guy.
Yeah, and I'd look at Tucker a little bit at 5,900, just because he did get more of the targets in their real important game, Arkansas. So I think he had 7 targets in that game, 5 receptions. So I might put a little bit on Tucker in this game.
Yeah, and that's what's tough. Like, I think Cincinnati's going to win big and score a lot of points, but they don't really have like that go-to guy that's like they're going to feed the ball all day. So they spread the love around. It makes it hard to target for DFS purposes.
Yeah, they got that kid that was that ended up in Indy, right?
Yeah,
Alec Pierce, yeah, and they had some talent last year that you could like stab, but this is tough. We're still trying to figure it out.
Waddle was on the team last year at tight end.
Mm-hmm.
He could catch a touchdown or two, and at 3,900, he's cheap enough. So I could see someone wanting to sprinkle him in there, but he's more returner play because he's a really low floor. He could just have one catch or something and not do anything. So if you want to try him in GPPs, I'd fine with it, but I wouldn't like him too much in cash or small tournaments.
Agreed.
Okay, so we have UCLA and Southern Alabama. So, it's funny. The Southern Alabama team has been okay.
They have been.
They're not bad. They're not. Listen, they're not going to beat UCLA, I don't think, but they might make this more of a game than you would think of a Southern Alabama UCLA game, right? I think they can maybe keep it a little bit more competitive. So we'll start on their side. Who do you like? Carter Bradley, their quarterback.
I do. I like him.
I think he's a fine play. I'm with you. I think if this ends up being high scoring, I think, like we said, I think there's a lot of quarterbacks this week that are about the same. So we'll take the cheaper ones, right? And I think Carter Bradley is in the same range as a lot of guys we're talking about in the 7K range. So at 6,100, I think he's in play.
Yeah, I mean, he's averaged 300 yards a game, throwing 6 TDs this year. So, yeah, he's taken a step up in competition, but it's not like UCLA poses this, steel curtain. So, yeah, and if we project, like you said, that UCLA wins, but wins with a little bit of margin, we got a team trying to come back. I really like Bradley in this spot. I think he's kind of in that Schrader range for me. So, really like him. He's probably my favorite play. I'll even say on both sides. I do like Robinson, but that's a lot. So, but sticking with Southern Alabama, he's my favorite.
I love that. Do you like anyone in their backfield for this week?
No, I don't. I don't. I know Webb's had a decent start to the season, but yeah.
So what about in the receivers? What receiver? I know Jalen Waynes is their number one guy. Lacey made a few nice plays. They're both affordable. Any other pass catchers you like on this team?
No, Lacey's my favorite that you talked about, 4,100. I mean, we got a guy that's almost 100 yards a game. 4,100 seems like a really good value there. But yeah, Wayne's solid too. But I'd rather take a step down, pair Lacey, and I'm only spending 10,000 on a quarterback wide receiver combo that's put up, on average, together about 45 points a game.
That's good. Yeah, I'm with you there. Now, let's take a look at this UCLA side. I actually like this UCLA side a lot too. I think they're going to score points, and I actually think the pricing. We remember Thompson Robinson was like 9,500 week one. We were kind of like, you can't play him because it's ridiculous price.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Now at 8,300, now he's playable. Right now he can run for 100 yards, and he can have especially if South Alabama can keep this game close, and he's got to play into the game and keep throwing the ball. I like Dorian Thompson Robinson this week.
I do. And I think if you take the strategy of playing a 6,000 quarterback, you can afford Thompson here at 83 and really, really safe play. I really believe that. I think this guy is, on his way to, first week he had 7 rushes, 87 yards. Didn't really need to run the ball last week. Will need to this week. Yep. So like you said, I think there's value. He's a 30 plus waiting to happen. So, and at 8, I'm fine with that. So yeah, I like him a lot.
Now, also, I'm trying to figure out what to do with Charbonnet as well, because I actually probably originally was going to try and go away from Charbonnet, but the price dropped so much in a matchup where they're big favorites. I think he's got to be played at 6,300.
Yeah, I mean, they held him out last week, but he's awesome. I mean, you even think of his days at Michigan ahead of time. He's dynamic. He runs hard. He's powerful. And the fact that he's just 6,300 when we've already talked about some of the other guys, Gray was somewhere in the 8 range. I think this is even better value. And I think, like we talked about earlier, guy can catch a little bit too, right? He had 5 receptions in his first matchup this year. So you could pair Robinson with Charbonnet and still get pretty good value, I think.
Yeah. And keep in mind, running backs in this offense are always good. This is a team that Chip, he knows how to make his running back. So he's going to get the ball. He's going to have to just running backs do well, and he's a good back. So I think there's a lot to like there. On the receiver side, Jake Bobo has been pretty disappointing. I think we talked him up a little. People talked him up as the transfer from Duke who would be, but he hasn't done anything. At this point, at 6,200, I'm going to wait and see. Show me something before I put him in a lineup. Casimir Allen's been their number one guy. He's the guy I prefer in the pass catchers.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. This Bobo's got to show us something. They're a little bit too hyped and a little bit underperforming. So Allen's been good. So, yep, agreed.
Now, I will say, if Bobo came in at like 4,400, I'd take a shot at him.
Yeah.
But at 62, there's too difficult a pricing this week to go there with him.
Yep.
All right. So as we go through this, get to the afternoon, what are we doing with Notre Dame?
I'm staying away, far away, except for Meyer probably. But, I still don't know if I can get there because of the uncertainty of quarterback. Like I have, last week, Meyer's 3,900. Now he goes up to 56 in a game when he doesn't even have a quarterback. I don't know if I can get there. So I think I'm probably putting a big X in this game.
So here's the issue. One of the big issues. Cal's actually got a good D too. Cal's not a flash. Cal can play. So I think if they were a weaker team, I might, give a shot to some of these Notre Dame guys. But against a good D, I agree. It's going to be tough. I might look at Lindsey one because he's so cheap and he can catch a big touchdown, which would cover that in basically one play, that 3,700 price tag. So maybe a one lineup or two with Lindsey. But
yeah,
another thing that I'm interested in is I am going to look at the backfield because They have been talking up how they haven't gotten Tyree the ball, and they're going to make it a focus. I think they are going to try and feed him the ball this week, get him involved. So at 4K, if you are spending up elsewhere, I think that is a value play there because Notre Dame's got a good line, right? They always do. So maybe that's a different way to be sneaky. I don't think you're going to get a high ownership on him. So I can get behind a Tyree play there.
Yeah, I like that point because look, this game has the lowest total, and it's by like far. They're 40.5 in this game. We've seen other games at 65.5 on this card. So they're 25 points less than a lot of our favorite games. It's going to be slow pace, but you might get volume and carries there, still get your points out of it, even in a low scoring game. So Tyree at 4,000 seems very, very good value.
And that's what it's for me. It's really the value. It's if he was 5K, I wouldn't be looking at it. But at 4K, he doesn't have to do all that much to get there. On the other side of the ball,
let me ask: would you play Meyer? Because I just think it's too much now, don't you?
So I love Meyer. He's one of my favorite players, but there's just concerns about a lot of things. The lowest total, when Pine came in, he did feed him the ball. He threw it him every time. But it's the low total. The price came up. There's just a lot of question marks. I think if Meyer was even 4,500, I'd play a lot of them. But at 56, I'm not going to say I'm not at 0, but I can't see me going too heavy on him here.
Yeah, I agree. And I saw Pine. I watched in that game, and there was only one way he was looking.
Yeah.
It didn't matter if 3 people were on him. He was throwing it. So So I agree. I think he could try and force feed it, which is good for the receptions.
Right. I think he'll get, Meyer's probably safer in cash because he probably will get 5 or 6 receptions, right? And so if he gets 5 or 6 for like 80 yards, like that will probably get you something.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see anyone in this game really breaking the slate in the low score.
Yeah, at 56, if you give me 18 to 20, I would be very happy with that. So I agree. Yeah.
Now, on the other side of the ball, this Cal team, I think I'm a full fade. Maybe you can want to look at one of these, but this is a low score. I think if you're going to look for value, you can probably go somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm good. Fade. I just don't see DFS game when we just have so many other potent offenses. I'm good.
But outside of DFS, if this Notre Dame team goes 0-3, yikes.
Yikes is probably saying it kindly, right? I mean, Freeman comes in, he's going to be the first coach ever, I think he already is, to lose his first 3 games, to lose his first 4. Oh, man. Yeah. And Brian Kelly stinks, by the way. I have no love for him, and he's going to blow that program up in LSU. But to think that he's left this program in this shape, whew.
Yeah. Well, good luck to him. Now let's look at this Penn State Auburn game. So there's some things to consider here. I'll start on the Auburn side. The only guy I'm really looking at Auburn is Tank Bigsby, who this is an NFL player. I actually think he's pretty underpriced here. Penn State's good. Penn State's is a tough front, but at 5,600, you're getting a guy who's going to play on Sundays, who can, I think he had 100 yards and a touchdown last year against them. I think it's a good value.
Yeah, I agree. And he's just really – I can't believe he's still in college, but he's really good. I feel like we've been talking about him for a few years, and 5,600 is way underpriced in my opinion. And Penn State linebacker, still a situation I think you can run on that team. Ohio last week didn't have a lot of chances. They got down early, had to throw. Purdue is not a running team, so they threw the whole time. So you're getting a little inflated stats with the Penn State rushing D here that I think is going to give us some, under-owned or lower-owned percentage by Bigsby than it should.
I would agree. So I think we're both aligned on Bigsby's a good play here.
Yep.
I got to give you credit. You were all over Singleton last week. You loved him. You called him out as a play. He paid off. He was great. He looks like the best back, but they're still not really giving him every carry.
Right.
Against Auburn, 10 to 12 carries is probably just not going to cut it because this is another caliber level of defense.
Yeah. I mean, he's just one of those guys you can tell when you see him touch the ball. He should get a lot more, and he had that huge game last week, 10 for 179. I think once again he's in play, but now they're starting to adjust accordingly. So 5,300. I do have some concerns with that salary. I think it's a little much if you're only getting those 10 carries, and you're not going to see that space you saw last week though with Ohio. On the flip though, I do like the receiver core out here. I don't know about you, but I think Tinsley, he had a low game last week. As much as, I did like him going in, he still snuck in a touchdown, but I think Tinsley is probably my favorite play. If you're looking at 5,300 there, and then 800 to Tinsley. I like Tinsley a little better over Singleton.
I agree. I think Tinsley's still being underpriced. I think
Yeah.
he's going to be the number one receiver on this team, and we've seen the number one receiver on this team is very valuable. Look at Dotson. He scored 2 touchdowns in the NFL already. So,
yes, he did.
So we're seeing that's a valuable position to be in. So at 5,800, I'm with you on Tinsley. I do think Parker Washington can have a big game too. I don't love the 6,100 price, so Tinsley's still my preferred play. But if you want to be different, I think Parker Washington can get you there. And if you really want to be different, Lambert Smith, he had 7 targets week 1. He wasn't as involved last week, but at 4,300, he's somewhere you can get different. I wouldn't overexpose myself to him, but maybe if you want to sprinkle one with there and you really like this Penn State offense, you can do so.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we passed over him, but I think Clifford is in play at 5,600. He's a guy that will run too, right? So it's just they do a little bit of that 2 quarterback stuff once in a while, so he loses a couple series here or there, but in the end, I think you could get some value with Clifford.
I agree. Listen, this Auburn defense is tough, but like you said, it's the 5,600 price tag. Like, this is still when we've seen Clifford, he's, 24? I mean, Clifford's been around for a while. I got that much experience in these games. He can certainly get you. Like, again, he doesn't need to go that crazy. He can get you there's 303 touchdowns, which is more than enough for this price tag. So I'm with you there. The last thing I'll say before we move on from this team is I love your call last week. I think this guy Singleton is going to end up being a star.
Yes.
I think that this week is just a tough matchup. I think as the season progresses and he gets a bigger share of the workload and gets a little bit easier matchups, he's going to be someone we're going to be going back to.
Yeah, I agree. And I think maybe this week, if we get a little bit of shutdown action, he drops salary and we smash next week. So that's kind of where I'm at. I just want to see what he does this week against a better defense. And hopefully he starts getting a little bit more of the touches.
For sure. All right. So we have Georgia Tech. This is an easy fade, right? Like this offense is terrible.
And I'm stunned. Like I thought that maybe they'd be able to generate some offense. I think they're like 118th in the nation already in 2 games. It's bad.
It's terrible. So and this isn't like, I don't really think Ole Miss is a great defense. Like, it's not a team like I'll target them in later weeks, but there's just nothing I like about Georgia Tech that makes me want to play anyone on this team. So that's an easy fade. And then I'll look at the Ole Miss side. The problem with Ole Miss right now is they haven't really committed to a quarterback.
That's what I heard. They won't even name a starter yet. So there's no way I would touch Dart anyway for 9,000. But he might not even start tomorrow. Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, if Altmaier was out and I was guaranteed a full game against Georgia Tech, maybe I could. But still, 9,000 is just too much.
Yeah,
it's just too much. So I think we got a fade quarterback. I think running back is interesting, right? I think Zach Evans has, for the most part, been relatively disappointing thus far. But we've seen Zach Evans enough to know, unless he's hurt, it's coming. He's a good player. He's a very good player. So I think this could be the week. 6,500 against a very bad team. They might just go to the ground here and let him run a bunch. So I'm probably going to be overweight to the field on Evans. And this guy, I don't know how to say his name, Judkins, has looked good. People seem to be hyping him up. He was a big-time recruit at 3,500. I mean, he's going to be second fiddle to Evans, but if they blow him out, he'll be involved, and he could also kind of rack up points at 3,500.
Yeah, I will tell you, Evans might be my favorite running back on the card this week. Ole Miss, I think, is going to commit to the run game. They're 10th in rush success rate. They're running for 250 yards a game, which is 11th best in the nation right now. Georgia Tech, 106 in rush defensive success rate. So I just think this is one of those games where you really have a strength versus a weakness. I think Evans he's one of my smash plays this week. So I think you're saying the same thing, and I'm with you.
I'm with you. Any pass catchers you like here?
Mingo's been okay, right? 6 for 129, a TD, and Heath has 5 for 67, 2 TDs. But in a game that I think is going to be more dominated on the ground, I don't really want to guess who's going to score the TD. And at those prices, I'm probably just going to lean on the running game here.
I think I'm with you. I prefer the running game here as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the Vanderbilt NIU game. So this Northern Illinois team is interesting. They got a really good offensive line. These guys have been around. They really kind of dominate the line of scrimmage. The problem is they spread the ball around so much that they're going to score, but it's hard to really hone in on who. I think Rocky Lombardi is a very good player at 7,700. I just think he's hard to get to.
Yeah, I agree. It's just Vandy is so bad. I mean, so bad on defense. I can't. And Hartman just toyed with him last week for a minute. There, we were like, maybe it wasn't the best play, and then boom, and I was never a Lombardi guy, and I know he had to transfer out eventually, but I still could see myself maybe against this Vandy team. I could see myself playing him at 7,700. And that'll be just kind of off the track play. One of those lineups that you're just like, hey, I'm going to throw everything low ownership at. So I'm not going to be heavy, but I think that he's in play.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's in play. It's hard. I'm struggling with who to match him with. I like this backfield. The preferred player here is Brown. I think he's been leading the carries. But yeah, they do share the workload.
Yeah, but he's good. I think I like Brown the most out of the backs there. I agree.
Now, Tucker is their best player, and Tucker can go off, and I will have some shares. The problem is at 8,200 and a team that likes to run the ball, I just think there's other receivers I'd rather go to as my number one. So I can actually see myself ending up coming fully off Tucker here because while I do think he's a really good player, I just think it's just a little too much to pay for him.
Yeah, it is. 82 is a lot, especially for, like you said, the game script could be a lot on the ground. I can't pay 82 for Tucker. I mean, it's going to be rare, especially if I'm paying 77 for Lombardi. I don't know if I compare the two. That's a lot. You're 16,000 on Mark. Yeah.
Now, what you said and where I agree with is this Vanderbilt defense is not very good, which – you know what that's good for? Mike Wright, because that means he's going to have the ball a lot and he's going to have to do something with it. So the fact that they stink on defense means I actually think it's a good spot for Mike Wright because I think Northern Illinois is going to score, and I think they're going to probably be playing from behind a bit. And, Mike Wright can throw a little bit. He can run a little bit. The dual threat quarterback is what you want in DFS, and that's what you get with him.
Yeah, he's been, 31 points a game, 3 games. I know they haven't been against the best defenses, but Mike Wright is very good. And like you said it right on the right spot on. He's dual threat. And I think Northern Illinois, okay, right? But not a team that is going to sit there and just stop him. I think he's a better value than even Lombardi on the other side. So I agree.
I agree. I prefer Wright there. I like this guy, Ray Davis. And we talked about Ray Davis last week. And he was what? He was under 4K as running back last week. He was one of the value plays of the week. He was in a lot of my lineups last week. Now he does almost 7K, which I still like him because he is good, and they're going to score points here. But at 7K, this isn't like a value back anymore. This is now one of your priority players. So I'm not going to be going crazy with him here at the 6,800 mark. But I do think he's a good player, and they are going to feed him the ball.
Yeah, I agree. And again, in a predicted high-scoring game, I think Ray Davis, it's a nice spot for him. I still think 68's not bad. I'm going to be worried, like you said. You get north of 7K and Vandy starts getting in that SEC schedule. This is one of the last few weeks we can probably play some Vandy guys.
Agreed. Now, how about a receiver here? I think Will Shepherd's just been mispriced. He's been their number one receiver. If you're going to play Mike Wright, I love pairing him with Will Shepherd. They've been peppering him the ball. I really don't understand why they put Body and McGowan. I mean, McGowan's good, but to put him $2,000 more than Shepherd, I don't think makes sense here.
Yeah. Now, Vaughn checking in, making a good point about, Wright only scored 1 point last week. I knew it was low, but 1 point, and that's true. But it'll be a little different this week. And McGowan's a nice choice. But again, a guy that's inconsistent in the air, I'm probably off most Vandy receivers and just going to try and rely on the running game with them.
The 1 point, obviously it's scary. That's a good thing because that's taking that ownership down because there's a lot of people that are going to say 1 point, I'm going away. Wake Forest is, I think, a much more talented team than NIU. Even though I like NIU, I'm not ripping NIU apart. I think NIU is a good team, but they're not Wake Forest.
Yeah.
And so I think they should have a bit of an easier time moving the ball in this team.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so let's take a look at this BYU and Oregon game. I know you have a take on Bo Nix, so talk to me. What are you doing with Bo?
I'm playing him. I thought it was very unfortunate. Just my take last week. Might have been some others, but I thought that Baylor got robbed. up in Provo. I think they got called for 15 penalties, something ridiculous. And but what I did see is I saw, BYU creates a lot of pressure up front, but once Chapin got comfortable and relaxed there, he had a lot of open field behind it. Bo Nix, for what it's worth, is a little better of an athlete, and if he sees the pressure, I think can probably open up the field and get a little outside the pocket more freely. I think there's some value in him. I know it's crazy, but what's he, 5,500 this week? Mm-hmm. I think BYU's susceptible to letting up points here. So I do like Nix this week. And I know you're a Hall guy. I think Hall has a lot of value too this week.
I do. I like Hall, and we haven't seen Hall use his legs yet, right? And he's a runner. So, and that's going to come, right? They're going to get him involved. The problem with BYU this week is their two top receivers being questionable, which is giving a lot of gray area. I know. Yeah. If we knew either way, it would be much easier. But the fact that they're late and it's going to be hard to swap because there's just such a different price range between the two sets of receivers makes it challenging. Hall's in play, but it's just going to be difficult to pick who to pair him with. If Romney and Nakua are out, then Chase Roberts a smash play at 3,200.
That's what I was going to say. What's the kid that made a great catch last week? It was Roberts. Yeah, that's it. That's what I was looking for. I had great over the shoulder. He tapped his toes 3 times and got into college, and he just won. He impressed me the most last week. That's huge, 3,200.
And I'm starting to come around to at 3,200. He's so cheap that even if Romney and Nakua play, you got to think that they probably won't be full go. So he'll be involved this week. So at 3,200, Roberts is probably in play. I think this is probably this been mispriced again.
Yep.
So I think he's the play here. And if we get confirmation on Nakua, I'll play him at 4,400. I just need to know he's healthy.
Yeah, because he's one of Hall's favorite targets by far. He relied on him a lot at the end of last season. So I hope maybe one of them plays.
Yeah,
and leaves me some room for Roberts. Yeah.
In the background, you don't have any shares of Christopher Brooks here.
After watching what Georgia did to Oregon, yeah, but it was a lot more Bennett in the play action game. But I still think I might rely more on the BYU passing game in this one. I don't know if I'll have a lot of shares of Brooks.
I do think Brooks is going to be a good back on this team. I don't know if this is the week that he's going to do it. I think there's going to be big weeks for him this year.
Yeah.
At 6,400, I'm lukewarm. Maybe I'll play him in a lineup or two, but I don't think I'm going to have too much exposure there.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. So let's take a look at the Colorado-Minnesota game. This one is a very, very easy one, right? No one
easy.
You can't play anyone in Colorado all year. I'll tell you now to the rest of the year. I don't care what happens. There will not be a player on Colorado that gets rostered in DFS for the rest of the year. So that's easy. That's a full fade. Now, the other side of the coin, and I said we did this last year with Michigan State's passing, right? We said whatever team is playing Michigan State, you play the quarterback because they can't stop anyone. Well, this year, whatever team plays Colorado, you play the running back because they can't stop the run. You run all over them. We've seen it all year. So it's an easy play. And you know what I'm doing here? Well, you got to pay $9,400 for Ibrahim, and he's amazing. And the problem with that is he might only play a half because the clerk could be 34-0 by halftime. I'm actually okay if you're scared of that. Play Potts. So then Potts plays a half, and he scores 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. So they're going to run all over him. So it's just a matter of which guy you're going to play. The guy who's going to get him early or the guy who's going to get him late.
Yeah, Ibrahim is just an NFL talent. It was a shame that he got hurt early last season because he was looking like that dude. But this year he is that dude again. And I'm with you. The Buffaloes are, if they win 2 games this year, I'd be very surprised. They're bad, very, very bad. And I could see myself playing the 9,400 here and there. My problem with the 9,400, you already got one part of it right. He could only play half. The second part, I think he's just going to be highly owned. Even at that price target, it's crazy to think, but I just think he's going to be one of those guys that kind of the public just jumps to. So I don't think I'll be super heavy on him, but I do. And there's nothing wrong with playing public side. You do it, I do. You just got to get it right? You got to, when you have those favorite plays, you can be with the public. But if you have the favorite plays and he doesn't do it, that's where it hurts. So I'll play him a little bit, but 9,400 is a ton. It's like the highest outside of like one quarterback, I think.
I'll add to that. You're right. You're dead on in that one of the biggest mistakes people make in DFS is they try to full fade the public. And it's like, there's still a reason these are the most popular guys, right? They are the best plays. So I don't like the notion of like, let me just try and get fully away from all the chalk. It's just a matter of don't go all in on the chalk. Just find a ways to get different. But you can
pick one or two. Yes.
Exactly.
Exactly. And he might be one. He might be one of the ones I do pick. I probably won't play as heavy as the public does, if that makes sense.
And you're right. I mean, I'm okay with fading because I do think he's only going to play a half. And
he'll still get 30.
And at this price point, 30 is like, it's basically what 30 is like barely good enough. He's like, he has to get 30 to make it work. If he doesn't get 30, it's like, I don't want him. So he's like, there's a very small window because he's not going to get 50 because he's not going to play that much. So he's got to really get like 4 touchdowns in the first half, which he can, but he's really kind of got to do it in order to make sense.
Yep.
All right. So let's look at, oh, wow. We really zipped through. We get the last game, Kansas and Houston. This game actually is an interesting game. Houston has not disappointed. They have made some explosive, exciting games to start the year, and I see no reason why this one, I think, is going to be exciting again. Kansas has shown improvement. Kansas is not the same dud they used to be. Jalen Daniels, a transfer from Arizona State, can run. He can throw. I think they're going to have to stay in this game, and Houston has gotten torched twice already this year. So they've shown that quarterbacks can have some success on them. I actually think Jalen Daniels is going to be one of my top 3 quarterbacks of the week.
Yeah, I agree. We've gotten to the point now, like early in the season, had this like idea that Houston had a good defense. And still might be good, but it's not really that good. We've seen 2 quarterbacks absolutely tear them apart. And I think I'm back at it again with Jalen Daniels. I'm with you. I was big on Kansas before this season, had over their win total, just because the atmosphere that the new coaches and the change of the culture, the guy coming over from Buffalo, has really done a lot to them. The win in West Virginia last week was enormous. They got down 14 early and then just put their foot on them. And it was a lot of this offense. So I think Jalen Daniels he's Schrader level for me. He's right up there. He'll be in over 50% of my lineups, more than likely. I'm with you.
I love it. I'm with him too. I also think you can play Devin Neal. Again, this is 5,400, a game I think that's going to score points. They're getting him the ball. I wouldn't play. I don't think I'm going to play Neal with Daniels. But if you're not playing Daniels and you want to play a value running back, I think you can get Neal in there a little bit as well.
Agreed.
And then on the receiver side, Lawrence Arnold, I just think is too expensive here for a Kansas receiver. But I will play some Grimm and maybe some Skinner. If I'm going to put somebody with Daniels, I think those 2 guys will be my preferred options because of price.
Yeah, agreed. Both of them over 100 yards in the season, putting up double-digit DK points. I would like Grimm and Skinner a lot more than Arnold in this spot. Agreed.
Now, on the Houston side, right, they're finally starting to give our boy a little respect. Finally. I still think he's one of the best receivers in the country, and I'll still play him, even at 10.9. I won't he was probably my highest owned player for weeks 1 and 2, at least in the top 2. It won't be that this week. No. He'll still be in there. I'll be playing him, but now he'll be, maybe in the top 15 or 10 or something like that.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, he's only had 12 receptions so far, but they're trying to get him the ball, and he's still averaging like 22, 23 DK points a game. One of our favorite receivers. I'll still play him at 79, but last week 6,000 was a discount. We're not getting discounts anymore the rest of the year. Yeah. I'm probably still going to get him in there because I think this week he will get more than his average, which is 6 catches. I do see him over the 6 catch route just because Kansas is going to play that style that's fast paced. They don't really have a great defense. So the one I'm a little more nervous about is Tune. I don't know what to think about him at 8,200. It just feels like I'm not sure I can get there with all the other quarterback value on the board. I might just be Dell and maybe some Campbell, but where are you at with Houston?
I'm with you. I like Tune as a player. I'm struggling with the price tag. I think Tune is a mid-7s guy to me. So if I got to pay him, and a slate where we already feel like there's some smash plays that are really expensive, he's not that guy, right? I think Tune's ceiling is relatively limited. So if we're going to pay up for somebody, it's going to be hard to fit Tune in. So I'm probably going to have to go a different direction there. And I think Campbell's kind of middle of the road. I'm not telling you, I'm fine with playing him. I can see going other directions. There's a lot of guys in that range that I think are all pretty similar. So I'll probably have a few shares of Campbell, but nothing crazy.
Yeah, agreed. And I do think this is one of those games. If you haven't seen Kansas yet, Joel already talked about they are a lot better than they were. They're not that laughing team. They even played a game against Texas last year. I think it was 58-57, something ridiculous. So they can play with pace and they can put up points. So this is a game that I will like to actually stack both sides a lot.
I agree. Especially if you are playing Daniels here, it's a good time. Like, I will want to get someone on the other side, whether it's Campbell or it's Dell. Like, find a way to score the goal, because I think if it hits, it's going to be a high scoring game. It's going to be a back and forth. And so I'll try and get just exposure to this game environment if I'm going there.
Yep, at 100%.
That's a wrap for this week. It's a little different this week. There's not as much obvious value as there was last week, but I still think you can seriously narrow down your pool, target some of these games, find these plays. Like, a lot of these teams, there's one or two guys that get the ball, and everyone else is secondary. So we can really hone in on those plays. What are your kind of final words going into the weekend, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I've circled 5 games that I'm really going to try and put 80% of my lineups into. That's Oklahoma, Nebraska. I mean, I love the Kansas Houston that we talked about. I'm going to be in the Purdue Syracuse game a lot. WKU Indiana is sneaky. I'm going to play in there. I'm going to play a little in the Ole Miss Georgia Tech range as well as my 5th game. Problem is I'm only playing one side there. So the other 4 I could see game stacks. That Ole Miss side is going to be strictly an Ole Miss running attack for me. So that's where I'm looking. And I think, like you said, at least, I mean, the market has adjusted, but we still see some really good value plays out there if you've listened for the last hour.
Yeah. And for me, I think it's obvious, right? The value to be found is at receiver this week. There's some receivers that you can dive down and get, and you're going to pay up. There's some running backs, some quarterbacks you got to pay for that we're probably going to have to just eat and go after and find a way to make those lineups work. So it's going to be a fun weekend. Please, please, please don't forget, hit the like button, give us a follow, and come back next week. Let us know how you did. Let us know if you got the green screens. We're off to a hot start this season. We're looking to continue that trend. Good luck.